Day after Mother's Day. Happy day after Mother's Day to all those wonderful moms, grandmas, aunts, friends who act like mothers in our city. I hope you had a great day yesterday. I know the weather wasn't ideal, but we celebrate you. We thank you, especially during this time, these past 7 weeks. I think every mother has been tested to the max. For that matter, every father has been as well. Every parent has been. It's been an interesting time. So we hope you had a good day celebrating all those moms and motherly figures around the city of Noblesville. I'm joined once again by my friend, a mother herself, Kristen Boyce of Pathways to Healing. Kristen, happy Monday.
Thank you. Happy Monday to you, Mayor Jensen.
So glad to have you on this morning. So glad to have so many friends. I was actually talking this weekend with several of my family members who were commenting on Mental Health Monday. They had some recommendations of some folks that they work with that need to tune in to Mental Health Monday. So hopefully there's maybe some new folks joining us today from all over our city, all over our state, and I know even all over our country. So thank you for doing so. A few housekeeping rules. If you have any thoughts or questions, type them in. If you just want to say hi to us, we love to hear from folks, to know that you're on. Say hi in the chat box. Let us know your thoughts. If you have feelings that you want to share, if you want to let it out, feel free to do that. We're happy to receive those comments, that feedback anytime throughout this program. We'd love to take any questions on the fly. Kristen's great at this. She is a Facebook Live pro. So over the last couple of weeks, so please feel free to share your thoughts. Say hi to us as we get started. Kristen, let's get started on this Monday morning with some breathing techniques. I'll let you lead us through that. I will tell you real quick too. I got my 3-year-old this weekend. Hank the Tank was losing his mind on Saturday. I don't even know what it was over. I'm sure it was a very important topic, but we actually got him to breathe out and then cool the cookie twice. And so it was a great moment, got him calmed down. So thank you very much. I wanted to give you a shout out in that moment. I got that 3-year-old to do it. So take it away.
That makes my heart happy. That really does. Because now it's showing that this does work in the heat of the moment. As long as you're breathing, it helps your kids to breathe. So I love that example you're setting. So let's take a moment to do our breathing. This is the number one self-regulating tool that I can teach all clients, and I use it myself in my own personal life. So we're going to put our feet on the floor. It's called square breathing. We're going to inhale for 4. We're going to hold for 4, and we're going to slowly release out our mouth to benefit from that full breath for 8. So go ahead and put your feet on the ground, kind of pressing into your heels. And we're going to inhale for 4 through your nose. Hold. Release. Just kind of check in and notice how your body feels different. We're going to do one more. And with children, you can do smell the cookie, cool the cookie, smell the soup, cool the soup, blow the bubble. So those are also great to get some bubbles out for your little ones to kind of help calm that nervous system down. So we're not in fight, flight, or freeze. So let's do one more. Inhale for 4. And just notice how more regulated you might feel. You might feel short of breath, and that's okay too. That's just your body trying to really recenter and realign itself. And it's really important you're doing this at least every hour. So people, when I work with clients, I'm like, yep, every hour you're doing 3 to 5 breaths an hour. So when you do have a situation that's stressful, or you feel overwhelmed, or the kids are having meltdowns, you know what to do. You've already practiced. So every hour, 3 to 5 breaths an hour to help you center, get clear, get connected, to get present, and to get calm.
I love that. So thank you for that. And everybody, I hope you're practicing your breathing all day today, all week this week. Kristen, let's pivot a little bit. And I was thinking this morning, We've been in this new routine, the new normal, or whatever you want to call it, for the last several weeks. I don't know about you, but I personally, after several weeks of a routine, kind of get in a funk. And this morning, I was in a little bit of a funk. I don't know what it was. I went out and ran this morning at 3.1 miles. That usually helps trigger some endorphins within me. But I don't know if it's just that we're kind of now getting out of COVID and thinking about what the new normal looks like. But if you're an adult, you're kind of just a little bit lonely this morning or in that funk. I know maybe some mothers came off of a high yesterday and now you're kind of back to okay, we're on a Monday again. What some kind of quick tips can we give folks that if you're in the funk, how do we kind of lift our spirits here in a quick moment? What kind of top tips do you have?
Yeah, first of all, let's acknowledge that people do have a lot of feelings right now. And I've been working with a lot of clients. They're grieving. Some are going back to work. So they're going back out into the workforce and having some grief over the time that they did have at home because it felt safe. They felt cocooned. And so just let's acknowledge that we're all having different feelings. They're not right, wrong, good, bad. We all are having a collective amount of grief right now. And so the weather also plays a role, as we know, but I really want to acknowledge the collective grief. And I think that's when we say funk. Sometimes we don't even know that we're grieving. We feel like I just feel off today. I feel like I'm not myself today. I feel maybe just kind of like we got the blahs, is what I call them sometimes. And when we do get like that, it's a really important. I like how you got out and moved. I think that can be really helpful, some movement. And what I really encourage people to do is acknowledge that you might be having some feelings. I know yesterday, my husband said, I just kind of feel sad today. And I said, yeah, I get that. And I don't know why that was the response. And I said, yeah.
Because he is used to being barefoot skiing and it was like 30 degrees outside yesterday. That's
yeah, exactly. Yeah, he can't do what he normally does. And I said, it's okay. We don't have to know why. Sometimes we kind of torture ourselves with, why am I feeling like this? And I go, it's okay. Just let it out. Just let yourself have those feelings. So first of all, acknowledgement of our own feelings is significant. Acknowledgement of our kids' feelings. This is where we begin. We begin by not shaming ourselves or shitting on ourselves or belittling ourselves or comparing ourselves and going, well, they seem okay. What's wrong with me? No, it's okay to have your feelings. So acknowledgement first. Again, we're going to breathe through those feelings. We're going to be tender with ourselves. If we get in fight, flight, or freeze, or we feel stuck, shaming ourselves isn't going to help us get out of it. And so we have to have some compassion. So some grace and some compassion for ourselves. I'm real big into having your journal. And I know people are like, well, I don't want to journal, and that's silly. What I can tell you about journaling is not just like writing your feelings. It's maybe a thought you had. Maybe it was a piece of inspiration, some creativity, whatever it is. I keep my journal with me and I just jot that down. It might be one word. It might be, what do I miss the most about what we used to be able to do? Or what am I most afraid of now? And when we write that down, we're processing it. We're not keeping it trapped in our bodies and our nervous system. We're continuously releasing it. That's really important right now, that we're releasing. And whether that's through movement, whether that's expressing the feelings, talking to somebody, it could be a therapist, it could be a friend, it could be someone that's emotionally available. And what we do is we're now moving that energy. We're moving those feelings out. And a lot of people get afraid they're going to get stuck in it. And what's actually keeping them stuck is numbing it, shoving it down, eating it, whatever it is, we're moving away from it. It doesn't help us move through it. So those are my really important pieces that we're really nurturing ourselves through this time, because a lot of people are getting reactive. And when we're getting reactive, we're in fear. We're in self-protective mode. We're trying to protect ourselves from what's to come. And that doesn't help us move through things. When we acknowledge it, we actually become less reactive. So that's one of the other pieces I'm noticing, is a lot of reactivity for people with anger, control. And what I want to say is take a deep breath. We're all afraid on some level, whether it's finances, whether it's family life, whether it's what the future holds, what are we going back to school or not. And that uncertainty can trigger a fight, flight, or freeze response in the nervous system. And the first thing is get present here and now. Take a breath, nurture yourself through it. So those are a couple things that I'm noticing that might be helpful to get through the blahs.
Well, I like that, and so this is me going on record to say I'm feeling a little blah today, but I'm gonna continue to work through it. So I just want everyone to feel comfortable with letting their friends or family know that they're just having a little blah day. So I'm feeling a little blah, but I appreciate those tips, and I just want to say thanks to Patrick, Tanya, Nancy, Stephanie, Maggie, Patricia, all you guys saying hi to us this morning. Thank you. It means a lot that you're joining us on this Mental Health Monday here with my good friend Kristen Boyce. Hey, I want to transition a little bit. You mentioned the word earlier about grief and loss, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I know it's a little dark, but I want to talk a little bit about that because I know, for example, I have a good friend of mine, my best friends from Noblesville, lost her grandmother during this time. So no funeral, no wake for them. That would be very, very hard to process for them. Whether it be a loss of a human in their life, whether it be a loss of a job, a loss of friendships, loss comes in many forms. So can we talk a little bit about some of those dark places and how you kind of process loss and grief in whatever form it is for you during this time?
Yeah, I think it's an important piece to center in on because all of us experience loss and grief on many different forms, many different levels. We can't get out of this one. We're all in this one together. And I think so much has gone on where we're not in the grieving process that we quote unquote normally could do, where we gather, we hug one another, we cry on each other's shoulders. We're not able to do that right now, especially with funerals. And there's a lot left to be said about that. Feeling that support from people is really important right now. And so what I've encouraged people to do that have had losses is, one, to acknowledge it. That we have to acknowledge our own pain. And a lot of us have trouble doing is acknowledging our own pain. And when we can acknowledge the pain, when we can acknowledge the sadness, when we can acknowledge the fear, when we can acknowledge the anger, that helps us be able to move through the waves that grief comes in. Grief is not a linear process. So we have the 6 stages of grief by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross that we know are there's not a linear process. And when we can go, oh, this is the grief burst, I call them grief bursts, and they hit us out of nowhere. 1 minute we'll be okay, and the next minute we're not. So 1 minute we'll be like, oh, I'm having a pretty good day. And the next minute we have a song that comes on, or we have a picture that flashes on social media, on Facebook, and all of a sudden we're back in the grief. And those it's important for us to go, oh, I know what that is. That's grief. Those are bursts of grief. And to tend to that, to acknowledge that, to get a support network. This is really important with grief, whether it's an ambiguous loss, a loss of a job, divorce, or a physical loss of somebody you loved, a loved one, a colleague, a friend, a neighbor, a community member. And when we can come together as collective and talk through special memories, we can talk through the fear, we can talk through what we loved about that person. That's really important. So grief groups, I know grief.com is a really important resource right now. David Kessler, who's a grief expert, has created a community for people to be able to come with different support groups. And here locally, we have Grief Share. Noblesville First United Methodist Church has Grief Share. There's other local churches that offer Grief Share. And then there's some online right now, of course, as we're in this pandemic. It's important to have support. And that we don't go into grief comparison. Everybody grieves differently. So when we have a loss of a person or a loss of, let's say it's a divorce, the kids are going to grieve differently than the parents. A spouse might grieve differently than a grandchild. Everybody has grief differently, and there's no right or wrong way to grieve. And we think there's a deadline or a timeline, and like there will be like a marathon and then the grief will be over. If I just do steps 1, 2, 3, then grief will be over. And it doesn't work like that. We might grieve. The amount of grief we have is the amount of love we had for that person. And when I say focus on the love, that's the amount of pain you're going to have because you loved that person so much, that much. And I want to kind of walk through quickly, and we're going to do a Facebook Live on Pathways to Healing Counseling after this, but on the 6 stages of grief. And again, they're not linear. It's not like step 1, 2, 3. So I want to make that very clear. The first step is denial, where we're kind of in shock. If you've ever had, where maybe you've lost somebody that you love and it's shocking. It's like disbelief. It's surreal that they're gone. Anger, we might be angry that we're left by ourselves, or we didn't get to say goodbye. And that's a big one right now. People aren't getting to say goodbye and walk the person through the grieving process, where we get to hold their hand and we get to tell them how much we love them, and we get to share all of our feelings for that person. Sometimes we're able to over the phone and sometimes FaceTime, but a lot of times we're not able to do that. So it feels very, there's not what we call closure. There's never really closure with grief, but especially now when we're not able to be with the person, there can be a lot of anger around that. And that makes sense because we wish we could be with the person. Bargaining, this is if we feel like we have some regrets, like if I had only, then they would still be here. Or if I just did this, maybe they'll come back. The bargaining is one that we can be in for a while. And depression, which is really sadness. That's really the sad phase. Acceptance, acknowledging the reality of the loss. So we're accepting that this person isn't coming back. And now the new stage that David Kessler came out with is finding meaning. And when we find, and that doesn't come, people are like, well, I'm not finding the meaning. And I'm like, it's that time. Mm-hmm. You'll know when the meaning comes. It might be years from now. It might be, we don't know when we'll find the meaning. When we're in the middle of it, to find the meaning is really difficult. So that, again, it's not a linear process. Sometimes it helps to normalize what someone's going through. But grief is something that it's hard to describe and explain to people. When people are going through a loss, they might not have the words. And oftentimes at the beginning of a loss for somebody, there's a lot of support, and then it kind of tapers off. And so we kind of feel like, well, everybody's life goes back to normal, but I'm still over here grieving. Mm-hmm. And we go, yeah, that's that. And then we want to talk through that. We want to acknowledge that because it can feel lonely. And that's why support groups are really helpful with grief. So grief is a hard subject. People don't like to talk about it. People don't know what to say to people in grief. So they don't say anything. They're like, well, I don't know what to say. So, and all I can say is when you just acknowledge maybe some of the feelings and just check in, I'm so sorry. I wish I could take your pain away, and I know I can't. I'm just here if you just want to vent, if you just want to talk, if you just need a shoulder to cry on, if you just want to hug, because we can't take someone's pain away. Believe me, I would sprinkle that out like it was candy. Mm-hmm. I would. And I know there's meaning and growth through the pain. And right now we're having a lot of growing pains, and grief is not, this is a tough subject for people to really lean into. We want to move away from it. Mm-hmm. And when I say, no, we got to lean into it, have compassion, have self-compassion, offer compassion to other people right now. We're in a community. Let's be a community that shows up. Let's be a community that acknowledges the hard. Let's be a community that talks about pain and doesn't medicate it, doesn't, try to move away from it. When we can do that, we can transform. We can transform lives. We can transform our school system. We can transform our places of employment. We can transform just in general, because we're no longer shoving it down. We're saying it's okay to talk about it. And we're going to acknowledge it. This is a lot to talk about, a big subject. And so that's some starting points when we're talking about grief.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, because I know it's been on a lot of people's minds lately. And I'll say too, just from a personal standpoint, I know grief is hard for individuals to talk about if you're going through it, but then I know it's also hard as a friend or family member to support those who are going through it. I know personal example, Julie Jensen, my wife, really hates funerals, and that because you don't know what to say, right? And she doesn't know what to say. And so my advice has always been, choose your phrase, whether it be, I've been thinking a lot about you, or I'm so sorry for your loss, and have it in your mind ahead of time before you go in, because it is a hard conversation. It is a hard thing to do, but you will ultimately feel much better as a person, as a friend, knowing that you did that. You took time, and on the other side of it will be very rewarding for you, knowing that you were supporting that friend. So just a personal thought I have on that topic. So I want to talk about two other groups of people that I know are struggling right now. Let's talk about couples first, because I know right now we are on this Monday morning, there are restaurants that are going to start opening today. There are nail salons and hair salons. There was a collective sigh across the city. I know some people were excited about that, but I also know there's some people that are very fearful about that. I've heard from them here in the mayor's office. Let's talk about husband and wives, or husbands and husbands, or wives, or whoever your partner is. There might be disagreements on what you feel comfortable doing. I may differ from Julie Jensen and what she feels is appropriate, and that may cause conflict over these next several weeks as we start to open up our society back to a new normal. Can you talk about some ways to get through that conflict with your partner?
Yeah, first of all, what typically is underneath conflict is a lot of fear. So if somebody doesn't have a lot of fear and someone that does have a lot of fear, there's going to be a heightened difference between the two. And if we can acknowledge that there is a universal collective fear, and again, it doesn't have to be maybe that you're not physically afraid, but let's say you're afraid of the economy, or you're afraid that the kids aren't going to go back to school in the fall. Whatever the fear is, we have to talk about it. So I recommend couples are leading with, I feel afraid because. So I'm giving you a phrase. I feel afraid because I'm afraid we're going to get exposed, and then the kids are going to get, that we're going to jeopardize our parents or grandparents or whomever it is. Can we talk through it? Now, it doesn't mean the other person is going to respond and go, oh, yes, let's. It doesn't mean that. What I'm doing is, when we use an I feel statement, we're owning our feelings. So talking through the fears is critical right now. Talking through what are you afraid of? What would help to mitigate that fear? Well, it would help if we all commit to wearing masks. It would help if we all commit to social distancing, and let's talk through what that looks like. Let's all commit to washing our hands more frequently or whenever we're out in public. We've got to commit to maybe some boundaries that are cohesive for the family unit. It doesn't mean everybody's going to agree. And I really encourage couples to be compromised, because we get into this right and wrong and good and bad. And what we do is we get in a standoff of who's right. And when we get in on a standoff of who's right, we are going to be in major stuck. Couples are stuck. And so when we acknowledge to understand, when we lead with empathy, and that's hard to do if we feel like they don't agree with us. And we have to do that by acknowledging what the other person is saying. So if one person says, I feel afraid that we're going to get it, and that we're not going to protect our parents, then you can go, so let me see if I'm understanding. You're really afraid that if we go out, that we're going to infect our parents. And they can go, yeah, and I'm really scared, and go, oh, I get that. That makes sense to me. When I acknowledge feelings, it doesn't mean I agree with them. It means I hear what you're saying and I get it. And let's figure out how we can come together and compromise and what works for everybody. And so we have to talk through these things. If we don't talk about things, we're not getting underneath to the root. And the root is in the feelings. So if I'm not acknowledging the feelings, and this might remind me of something in my life. And so that's why doing work right now, your own work, if I can encourage people on any level, do your own work. We all have issues. Nobody gets skates in this life or no issues. I have issues. We all have issues. And when we take responsibility for our own issues, our own fears, our own anxieties, we are transforming systems. So this is the time for all of us to be doing our own work to be healing those inner wounds that we've had for a long time, and to be acknowledging some boundaries that we might need in order to come together as a family system and talk through some of those fears. And so that's my suggestion at this point for couples and for most of us just living through this pandemic.
That's great. Well, I appreciate that because, again, I know that it's going to be a very transformative conversation in every household these next several weeks. And I keep telling our, the citizens of Noblesville, you are in control of your own destiny here, and you need to take care of yourself and do what is best for your house and your household going forward. So I appreciate that. Let's pivot real quick while we have a few minutes left. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to type those. Let us know. We're happy to answer them. But I want to talk about, we have 6 days left of e-learning. Collective hallelujah across the city of Noblesville. You've almost made it. We're so close. But for some people, that's 6 more painstaking math lessons with a crying 9-year-old. And I get that. So let's talk about those tips for parents focused on e-learning this week to make these next 2 weeks as painless as possible.
First of all, we're on the home stretch. You did it. Give yourself some props. Give yourself some pats on the back. Teachers, administrators, students, parents, grandparents, you're on the home finish line. Breathe, self-regulate. I cannot teach that enough. It's super hard to do when you have somebody screaming, tantruming, melting down, yelling, throwing things, hitting, biting, kicking, whatever it looks like. Super hard to do. So if I can teach one thing, it's that breathe until you're calm. Otherwise, again, my little brain model, you are in fight, flight, or freeze. You will not regulate your kid. It won't happen. So give yourself, if you need to take a break and say, I need to get calm. Mommy or daddy needs to get calm before I'm going to go breathe. And that might be what you do in that moment. Take breaks. Take breaks, because you cannot keep pushing. If a child is in fight, flight, or freeze, you will not get any learning done. You're going to have a power struggle. Then mom and dad are going to get in fight, flight, or freeze, and we're in a power struggle. We're in a lockdown. This is not how we solve the problem. Super hard. So mom, dad has to get regulated, has to breathe, has to center, has to anchor, feel your feet on the floor, do that breathing. And then we'll see what your kid does. If we can get the child to self-regulate with us, that's half the game. Give choices. So we can either do the e-learning on this computer, or we can do it on the iPad. Which one would you like to choose? We could do the e-learning over in this corner that we've made this, space for us, or we could do it over here in this corner. What would you like to choose? We could do a snack now, or we could do a snack after we do our assignment. What would you like to choose? I'm big into choices. Now, I don't mean give 20 choices. I mean, give 2 choices. That's just a few examples. But number one is the parents have to be doing their work. And I know it's exhausting. I'm with you. I'm right there with you. I have to do mine. Otherwise, I'd lose my mind. So if you see me in my house, guess what I'm doing? You will see me. Number one, can I have? You just ate 2 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. So I'm having to breathe. Or you missed your Zoom call. Breathe, regulate before I react. Then we're going to be processing. When they're calm, then we can talk through it. You cannot talk through it like when they're flipped. Forget it. Number one, self-regulation. I wish it were some magic formula. I do, but that's it.
Yeah, that's great, because again, I know we've the constant chattering there, the flip lid this weekend. We were trying to get the 3-year-old to make a video for Nana. It's not working. One of us was yelling. It wasn't even me, but
hey, we've all been there.
We've all been there. I went downstairs and just kept my mouth shut. So, but we've all been there. So that's great.
We've all been there.
Hang in there, Noblesville. We're so close. We're almost there. Kristen, before we sign off here, we've gotten a few calls in the mayor's office the last couple of days, people who are just in a bad spot. They're either in a domestic violence situation. They're, they are fearful of their own life. They're self-doubting their own self-worth. where can they go for help? I want to make sure
Yeah.
we get that out there before we sign off here.
Let's hit that, because that's really important, because people are feeling not important, that they don't matter. It's important to get help. So here's a couple things. 1, 911. 2, Community North has a program, inpatient and outpatient. 3, if you're in a domestic violence situation, verbal abuse, mental abuse, Prevail is the place to go here in Hamilton County. And their number is 317-776-3472. You can text. This is another separate. You can text CONNECT, CONNECT, at 741-741. And that's if you need to talk to anybody. If you need help, that's where to reach out. We have the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. They're wonderful. They do this all the time. If you feel suicidal, if you're having those suicide ideational thoughts, please call the Suicide Prevention Hotline. That's 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-TALK. And we also have the Disaster Distress Helpline. This is for any situation you feel lost, you don't know what to do mentally, physically. 1-800-985-5990. And again, you can call 911 for help. Please do not try to do this alone. Please ask for help. There's also therapists that are doing telehealth, virtual therapy that are available all around the US. So please do not do this alone. You are worth it. You do matter. You are worthy, and you are important. You may not believe what I'm saying, and it's true, because that shame wants to tell you something different.
Yeah, that's great. And that you took the words out of my mouth. Your life matters. You are valued here in this community, Noblesville. So let's stick together. We are all in this together. Kristen, thank you again for your time. You have been just incredible to help coach this entire city and others around the country through this. We'll be back next Monday. I want you to know that we're gonna have a special presentation next Monday. So you won't want to miss it. 11 a.m. right here as we do our Mental Health Monday on Facebook. But in the meantime, stay safe, Noblesville. Take care of yourself. Take care of your neighbors. Remember, we are all in this together, and have a great Monday. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks.